This is Elizabeth Clare Brewington. I'm with Brightside Global Trade TV, and I have two really super smart authors, and thank you both for serving this country. So I want to start with Bill Pekny, who's you've seen many times on our show, and he is instrumental in helping us put together the Earth Day conference stream that's coming up on the 26th and the 27th. And we will be using his book as a guide to setting the stage for this event. The book is called A Tale of Two Climates, One Real and One Imaginary. It's just one of my most favorite books, and I highly recommend that you all get it. So Bill has been with the U.S. Armed Forces. He's an atmospheric scientist, and I will just let him do the rest, and then I'll bring Hank, who is a former FBI agent, and he's written a book about corporate greed, which is very intriguing and very interesting for everyone to read about. So over to you, Bill.
Thank you, Claire. I appreciate it. I appreciate being on again. And my background is, as you said, an atmospheric scientist, a soldier scientist for 27 of those 50 years, and then a civilian scientist in the aerospace industry for the rest of the 50 years. And the last 5 have been writing this book, about 3 years of the 5 researching the book. It's a nonfiction, yet easy to read book that's intended for young adults and up. And it's to tell the other side of the story that you don't hear as often, which is the, some call it the realist side, some call it the denier side, as opposed to the alarmists, which they're advocating that we're in a climate crisis, and I'm on the opposite side of that, saying that the Earth is fine. It's warming slightly, but beneficially and usefully for all mankind, for all of us humans. And the other side is that we're in a crisis mode and we need to do something about it right now. Anyhow, background-wise, I started as my Army career actually with the U.S. Navy, assigned to them with the Navy Hurricane Hunters back in 1969 for Project Stormfury. And then I went on to my Army career of 22 years as a soldier scientist and another 5 years as a civilian scientist. But anyhow, what I think we're here to talk about today is how our Earth is doing. And Earth Day began in 1970 I think back then it was really pointed at, besides cleaning up our environment, our air, land, and sea, which was in a much different and worse place than we are right now. But it was also looking very worriedly at global cooling. And the fear was in 1970 that we're headed back for another ice age. And so in the rest of my presentation, I'll talk about how that came about. But Earth Day now is still about protecting the environment, but it's also, in the last few years at least, been about protecting our air in particular. And so I talk about what's in the air we breathe. I talk about carbon dioxide and the fact that it's not a pollutant, it's a gas of life that we need. It and water vapor and water combined with the sunshine in the air of the sun to produce oxygen and food that we eat, the photosynthesis process that you probably remember. Anyhow, so the book goes through the data behind a lot of the events that you're seeing publicized, the wildfires, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, and everything that's happening. And I go to great lengths in the book, and as we'll talk about here in a little while, the difference between weather and climate, because there is this distinct difference. And when when you mix them, you get in trouble real quick because they're apples and oranges as far as what lies ahead for the future. So that's me in a nutshell. The book, The Tale of Two Climates, one real, one imaginary, focuses on the other side, that we're doing fine, that there is no climate crisis. But I also talk about the other side and leave it to the readers to decide which are more supported by empirical evidence, physical data. And I think that's what it's all about.
Wow.
And one last thing, and not forgetting about history, which I in particular at one point in my life forgot about way too often. And looking back through the rearview mirror of history is where we learn a lot about our very complicated Earth and atmosphere.
That's true. And there's so much more that we don't know when we're getting into unknown territory. But thank you for
Yes.
your service and for writing this amazing book, which has been part of us for, I think, now 3 years. So it's just
Wow.
amazing. I want to now move on to just because there has to be a connection with why I'm having Bill and Hank together. So the machines are coming. The machines are coming. I think 2023 is going to be that year where we are going to be living with artificial intelligence. I don't think any of us thought it was going to happen so quickly. And I don't think any of us even ever imagined that we would be even considering living in a life without coding and codes. So there's changes on its way. And I think the pandemic had a lot to do with it, that made us move into a more of a virtual space, which has kind of speed up the usually long regulations and long reasons for not to have artificial intelligence on this planet. And it's here. And one of our focuses will be now moving towards that direction, because, and we'll come back to you, Bill, because it's going to play a big role in how we can learn more about atmosphere and everything with robotic technology. So we're going to have access to way more intelligent tools than we've ever seen before. So while we're excited about it, we're also a bit scared about it. And I think Hank has written a book at the most perfect time for this discussion, because he talks about corporate greed and about the many things that went wrong and went right with background screenings. And this is why we have to be even more careful with artificial intelligence, because if we go too fast, we'll be making too many mistakes too quickly. If we go too slow, we're going to be backward and insignificant. So it's kind of like, what pace are we going to go at? So over to you, Hank. I'm super excited because this is a very powerful veteran group that we serve, and we've never had anyone from the FBI, and we watch all these movies. So I'm really excited to meet someone in the real world. So Hank is a former FBI special agent and a director of corporate security. And Hank learned background screening the correct way. So he's here to give us some really good advice. If you own a company and you do a lot of background checks, if you're a job seeker going for background checks, and the book is really delightful. It's a very easy read, but it's a lot of information. So Hank, tell us about the book and what made you write this book and why now?
Okay, we'll start with why did I write the book? Well, my background is with the FBI was a lot of the work is applicants. As a matter of fact, we had, they were called SPIN investigations, special presidential inquiries. So everybody that comes on board with the federal government in a cabinet position, the Secretary of Transportation, all the secretaries of all those cabinet positions, they have to be checked out. And we did that, and they had to be scrupulously done. So that's how I learned applicant background background. I'm stumbling over my words here. Background screening. Then, after I left the Bureau, I started my own company, background screening company, because I saw a lot of companies that were doing it wrong, which I'll get into. So when I started the company, it was a lot of just going door to door, making phone calls to get customers. And we were doing pretty well. And we had one large automobile dealer. We had been working with them for several years, and then they decided that they were going to go to an automated system with their human resources department. And that meant that they had a link, this company had a link to a background screening company. I won't mention any names here. And I knew that background screening to be a corrupt organization. What they did was they violated the Fair Credit Reporting Act. That's the federal law that regulates background screening. And how did they do that? Well, you're supposed to, according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you're supposed to use reasonable procedures to assure maximum accuracy in the background check, which means that you've got to go to the court records. Back when in my FBI days, we'd go to the courthouse and you would get the records. Well, they don't do that today. They use algorithms, they use stale databases, and that's why innocent applicants get branded as sex offenders, criminals of all stripes, drug dealers, because they don't go the extra mile and do it the correct way. So when I was talking to this fella, he happened to be an attorney that they had hired. He said, well, we're going to go to an automated system. And now we're going to have a link to this company, background screening company that I knew. And I was aghast. I said, are you familiar with this company? They've been sued over 100 times for violations of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. They label applicants as criminals when they're not criminals. When you look at the report, the per applicant's name might be John Doe, and then they get Harry Smith. So nobody even looks at the report. You know what he said to me? He said, well, Hank, thanks for the call, but we're going to stick with what we're doing, and hung up on me.
Yeah,
That really got me. I said, that sensed me. And I said, you know what? I'm going to build up a case against this company, and I'm going to convince him, and I'm going to send a registered letter to the owner of the company to say, boy, I think you guys are making a big, big mistake. You're looking to get sued for millions of dollars. And by the way, I might as well throw this in here now. In the book, I report on 75 of the Fortune 1000 companies that have been sued and paid millions of dollars because they accepted bogus background checks from these companies. Over 100 background screening companies have been sued. Anyway, so I send off the letter. Do I get a response? Absolutely not. And then I said, I've got to put together a book. And that was the whole reason for doing the book. It's taken me 15 months. I worked on it every day for those 15 months, usually about 6 to 8 hours a day, in addition to, running a background screening company. And I've put together what I think is a pretty cogent book on background screening. And it's funny when I talk to people, I say this involves millions of consumers, and they're sort of, suspicious. Well, what do you mean, millions of people? And I point to just 2 cases. One, class action lawsuit, 660,000 aggrieved victims. Now, when you get a class action lawsuit, it always starts with one applicant. Then once the attorney files a lawsuit, now he has to make a motion to the judge to get discovery so they can get in and look at the books of the company that they're suing. And that's how they came up with 660,000. Another case, the second case, 440,000. 1.1 million aggrieved victims. So I thought it'd be neat to look at. What does that represent? 1.1 million is more than the population of Alaska, Delaware, Montana, North Dakota, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Wyoming. They have less than 1,100,000 people. That's how big this problem is. It's huge. And I don't see where it's going to end, because all of these companies, these big companies, they get sued for millions, 15, 20, 28 million. That's what they pay in damages.
Yeah.
But the top companies.
I think you're going in and out. Well, I think Hank has touched upon something that do your research before you. Yeah, well, you went in and out, so I jumped in. But I think the book is going to help people discern and save dollars, as we are trying to do a lot of cost cutting in choosing and selecting the right screening agency or company that you choose. So be aware of who you're paying to do a service, because it could cost you some real money. But I'm going to just end this recording real quick, because I want to talk about my conference that's coming up. And if you're interested in this topic, and you're interested in listening to Bill Pekny, and you're interested in listening to Hank, then don't forget to sign up. We're going to give you a link so you can sign up for our conference, which is going to be Earth Day, cybersecurity, I guess, background screenings, as well as it's a tech conference. And we're going to talk about the new jobs and new business opportunities that are now available for you with artificial intelligence. So it's something you're not going to want to miss, and make sure you register. And best of all, it's free. And all we say is buy these books and patronize these authors, because they are not charging us anything, but they're giving us their time to educate you as a consumer, to educate you as a community. So it doesn't cost you anything. Buy these books. We'll make sure they're on our recommended list. So I'm just going to